Hi, I'm Ed Locke with USA Mortgage. Here at USA Mortgage, we view you as customer for life. That means we are with you every step of your journey to help before, during, and well after you move into your new home. Home buying can be stressful, but we are here to make the process easy. I know drive and determination with my very talented team here at USA Mortgage will make for some incredible things. You can expect to receive great customer service from me with many customized options tailored to your financial goals and needs. So if you're looking to cruise into a new home or refinance, I can be the driver that gets you there. Call or text me at 502-680-0953 to find out how to get approved. NMLS ID 448908, Fast Acquisition LLC, doing business as USA Mortgage, NMLS ID 227262. This is not a commitment to lend. Additional terms and conditions apply. USA Mortgage is an equal housing opportunity.
You have scoured the podcast world. You have finally found the place where news is weighed in the balance. Welcome to Newsworthy with Steve and Jerry. 2 words and 2 question marks.
Jerry, welcome into Newsworthy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We're back. 2 shows in 1 week. We're making this a habit.
Are we?
I don't know.
We talked about
the numbers say we probably should, but hey, that's a lot of work. Hey, how about you, Mochi? You're first in today. I got some bad news earlier today. Yeah, it's very likely that our OG may not be here tonight. Double may be not here with us. We hope that they can. They have restarted school again, so go get them grades. We understand.
Yeah, you do have to prioritize things. We understand where we might come in second to a few things in this world.
Very few. Just very few. I mean, if mom's in the hospital or something, you take us with you. I mean, that's how that works. Mom needs to hear us coming through her speakers. I'm just saying.
Help with the recovery, right?
Yeah, absolutely with help with our recovery. So, real quick, tell people how to reach us, Jerry.
Well, they have a couple of ways. First is the email with Newsworthy with Steve and Jerry at gmail.com. You can also text us at the text line 540-709-1318.
Awesome. See, I have you do that. You want to know why I have you do that? Because I don't have that number memorized.
Well, I had the 1 week, remember?
I know. I know, right? You're such a numbers guy, though. You're so analytical, and you get that so well. I not so much. Not so much. So today, Jerry, we've got a big show. Big show. We've got a big topic that we're going to cover. Plus, we got a lot of headlines we're going to get through because they're all very important this week. And it's all fresh. Last week, last episode was kind of a rehash of what we'd already done that on an episode that got ruined. This is going to be a lot better, I feel. Also, I felt like I was so excited for last week's episode, and I don't know if you felt this way, but when we actually came time to do the episode, I was like, kind of flat. The retake.
Yeah, I
was a little flat. I was like, oh.
I felt that way probably more than you. At least you had new material.
Oh, that's true.
Bothered to do new material. Mine was just 100% react. By the way, Mochi, I absolutely agree. Her comment was good for double. That's not bad news. It's bad news that she's not here. It's absolutely fantastic news for double. Proud of her. You go.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, how was your week, Mr. Jerry?
It was very good. Although I must say, the weather here was nice. In central Kentucky, we've had some really great weather for mid-January.
Dude, yesterday I got not one, but both my bikes out for a long
I'm still
ride.
ready for spring.
Oh, me
tired of
too.
winter. I'm tired of winter, ready for spring. It feels like it's been going on for about 9 months now, this winter thing. And I'm certainly ready for spring.
It's not been no 9 months.
Feels like it. I didn't see it actually handed me. It just feels that.
Took me a second to catch that, but yeah, it's not been 9 months.
Can you imagine living in Alaska
No,
where they go for, I don't remember, they have almost total darkness for long stretches. of
it's almost
time.
6 months.
Don't imagine.
It would, and then daylight for 6 months. There was a movie with Robin Williams, and I don't remember the name of it. Maybe it was Insomnia was the name of the movie. Well, it drove him crazy. He ended up killing people. It was one of the few movies that Robin Williams ever did, and he was the bad guy in the movie.
I don't remember the movie. Insomnia.
Worth a
the
watch.
description is a Stephen King novel. Is that
Oh,
what it was based on?
I have no idea. It's
And
100 years
Insomnia,
ago.
in the book, it did exactly that. Almost drove people to kill themselves.
Yeah.
By the way, Alaska is known to have some of the highest rates of alcoholism, some of the highest rates of depression. You can certainly see why when it's dark. 6
Well,
months at a time.
Well, that and lack of care, mental care. And we kind of talked about this once before in one of our previous episodes where the lack of access to good mental health and mental health care contributes to that. Idaho is a big example. Montana, all these places where the population is so sparse, people got to drive 2-3 hours to town
To do anything.
to do anything.
To anywhere.
When I lived in Idaho, and I lived in Salmon, Idaho, which is kind of, if Idaho looks like a boot, Salmon is in the shoelaces. Just to get to a Walmart, it was 122 miles. We had to go all the way across the mountain to Missoula, Montana.
It's one of those places where you better not forget something when you're there.
I forgot
here-
the bacon.
Yeah. It's no big deal if we forget something.
Yeah.
I mean,
Literally, I
you
live
or
7
I.
minutes from Walmart.
It's nothing. It's not a big deal. But when you're 100 miles away from Walmart, when you go, you better make sure you don't leave something
Write
off
your
the way.
list and mark it off as you go for sure. So, what are we drinking today, Jerry?
We're drinking a new one.
Ooh,
Reggae Sangria.
interesting.
Glasses on, so read the fine print. It says an easily red grape wine with apple juice, cherry juice, pineapple juice, lemon juice, lime juice. Pretty much covered all the fruit there. But
Yeah. Hey,
natural flavor.
Double
Alcohol.
did find
You're
time for
welcome, Double. Yes, I've had several different sangrias homemade
Yeah.
before this. Those were better. The first sangria out of a bottle I've ever had. It's good. It's better than I expected. It obviously doesn't have the fresh fruit that homemade sangria does. Have you had bottled sangria before?
it. No, I have had it in a glass, like at a restaurant or whatever. On the last cruise I went on, I drank several glasses of sangria because it was sweet and delectable and
And red and cold.
red, cold. You know, all the things that are important to us.
Exactly.
So, how was your week?
It was very good. As I said, after the 9 months of winter, I'm ready for spring already. Other than that, it was a good week. Yours?
Sweet. Oh yeah, absolutely. No complaint. Recipe time. For once, it's not my turn.
For one.
So now it's your turn. What do you got for us, Jerry, in your 2-minute recipe?
Butter
Oh, wait.
swim.
I'm going to set a timer.
See,
Go ahead.
I can shorten mine as much as I want because I have the length of mine.
Oh.
So unlike you who just do it all from memory.
Timer's
like
running.
memory you do. But yeah, butter swim biscuits. An idea basically is you, instead of taking your rolling pin and licking your dough and rolling it out, cutting out the biscuits, with butter swim biscuits, you melt some butter. It's actually half a cup of butter in your dish. Mix up your dough, pour it in, and bake it. Pull it out, cut the biscuits, and you're done. You're
What?
supposed to lick to it. When you talk about easy biscuits that are very good, it really is. It can't get much easier. There's no kneading, there's no rolling pin, there's no.
So your biscuit recipe literally took 36 seconds. So say it one more time.
Butter Swim biscuits. There will be a link to it when I post it. If you haven't had them, trust me, you're going to love biscuits. For those people who do it the old-fashioned way, if you had a mom like mine that did biscuits the old-fashioned way, the way that most country moms did, this is not going to come close. Keep doing that. But for those lazy people like me who do not make bread, who do not, I have a rolling pin. I never use it. I just too much work.
Right.
This is an absolutely
Too many bad
fantastic
memories for you and
alternative.
the ex, right?
The rolling pin. Yep. Can't take the thoughts of that.
Well, I was doing a lot of research today. We have a lot of topics we're going to get into today. I found out something I didn't know, Jerry.
What was that?
Did you know that Bill Nye, the science guy, has a daughter that does not believe in science?
Real?
Yeah.
And they're hard to believe.
Hey, her name is Dee.
Deny? Denies it all. I can see that happen. Sad to say, but I can see that happen. Oh, I forgot to mention yesterday about my week. Did I tell you about the new dogs I got?
Oh, I didn't know you got new dogs.
2 new ones.
2?
Yeah. One I named Timex and the other one's Rolex.
Uh-huh.
They're my watchdogs.
Please, please, please send all hate mail in regards to terrible dad jokes to
Newsworthy. Stephen Jerry at gmail.com.
Attention Jerry. Please send that hate mail in for that.
And heaven forbid you do, but if you, for some crazy unknown reason, ever did decide to send feed pics, please, for the love of God, address those to Attention Steve.
Oh, speaking of that, I saw on one of those websites, and I don't remember what, but it was they were talking about pedicures last week. The live listeners were. So I wanted to see exactly what that was all about. And the first pic that came up, I kid you not, was after they had, I guess they paint your toenails or whatever when you're done. They had painted eyeballs on all of their toenails. It was the weirdest, grossest, most odd thing I've ever laid my eyeballs upon. Except maybe my daughter. I'm just kidding. I love my daughter.
What was the name of that new show?
Chewbacca. I just love her.
Jobs,
What?
Dirtiest Jobs.
Oh, yeah. Micro's Dirtiest Jobs.
People who have to get pedicures should be at the top of that list. I don't know if they are. I don't know if they ever made it. I'm just saying those people absolutely deserve to be at the top of that list.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. So, we're kind of pushing through some things today because we've got a long show today. I got a pretty big topic I want to cover, plus headlines. You've got headlines. I was just really, really, really aggravated prepping for this show today.
Why is that?
I was mad. I was crying. I was ticked off.
Ticked off or TikTok?
Ticked off. Yeah, I don't TikTok. That's you.
If you wanted to improve your mood, you should have spent a few minutes on TikTok. There's some funny stuff.
I'd rather not let the Chinese spy on me, but you go ahead. Okay. That's fine. You go right ahead.
What is exactly you're afraid the Chinese are going to see you do?
Whatever the Chinese, I'm afraid they're going to learn how to cook for me first. Okay. And then secondly, they might, you don't know what I do around the house. I might be cooking in my underwear and they be over there looking at me through my phone. That kind of stuff gets out. Those pics get out. And then all of a sudden, there's a whole kind of hysteria in China then about wanting to come to America.
For what? Almost
hey, Rocky Raccoon. Glad you're here, man.
It still applies. That is not what they say.
And I've told you the same thing. No, they don't matter.
Welcome, Rocky. Glad you could join us.
Yeah, we was just talking about you a little while ago. So I'm going to talk today about human trafficking. And when I say I was mad and shaking my fist at the computer and then crying because it's so depressing. That's not hyperbole. The whole premise of our show is to, and we struggle with this sometimes, but is the main premise of our show is to decide if news needs more or less coverage. How in the world, after doing the research that I did for the time that I put into it, that we aren't hearing about human trafficking every single day from every single news outlet, at least one story, blows my mind.
Well, if you do that, people will tune it out. They stop listening, especially to negative news. This is a very serious, very negative, very depressing topic. And if you're going to have every outlet covering it every day, I think people would real quickly just tune it out.
Yeah, and that's a damn shame. Because this, when we talk about human trafficking, and we're going to get into some of the numbers, I'm going to try not to bore people with numbers because numbers are a hard thing to see on the radio or on a podcast. When you get into the numbers, this is not just a world thing. This is not just a country thing or a city thing or a state thing. This is if you are alive and you live within the population centers of anyone in America, this is in your neighborhood. This is in your community. And it's heartbreaking on every level. Some people can say, well, if they're adults, it's not so much their fault. That's not true. And I'm going to detail some of how an adult can be put into this specific spot. And then we got several headlines to get to as well. Yeah, Rocky, the news, I'm going to have to agree with you on this. I don't like the fact that we don't see more of this. I think it has to do with what Jerry said too, that, if you run it every day, it becomes monotonous and people start to tune it out. It's kind of like the Macarena in that respect.
There's only so much negative news people can listen to. Keep in mind, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, CNN, every single one of these is in it for one reason, primarily. That's to make money.
Sure.
If they believe that running this every day would increase their viewership, would make them more money, we would certainly hear it every day.
Well, CNN is to do whatever. They're below. I saw on a report that their viewership is under 5 million for the first time ever. They have no audience.
What is normal?
Oh, back in the heyday, if you want to call the 90s their heyday, 25, 30 million, easy. Yeah. Anywho, so do you want to start with that tonight and then kind of ease it up with some headlines? Because I've got some headlines that's got me fired up too. So I don't know how there's going to be any let up today in the show.
We'll take whatever time is left and cover the emu news and other
the important stuff, right? I like that. The emu news. All right. Now I'm going to try to do this today without cutting our live feed. How about that? Okay, so we'll start with, before I get into the numbers, let me just start with some of, because I have it already pulled up here and I'm kind of old school. I've got paper, paper things available here. But anyway, let's talk about some of the things that if you see these things, some in your neighborhood, in your community, some triggers that you should be looking for every day, especially if you work with the public at all. So the first one is obvious signs of physical abuse. Human traffic victims could have cuts, bruises, contusions. They'll usually make, and it's very similar to the signs of domestic abuse, unfortunately. In a lot of ways, that's all it is. The person will appear malnourished, not eating well. The person will, avoid social interactions, especially one-on-one social interactions. And when you do have an interaction with one of these people, oftentimes their speech and what they what they say because that's what they're allowed to say is very, very scripted. Especially in the sex trafficking part of this. And we're going to get down to the breakdown of numbers. There's two big components to human trafficking. Sexual by far is the biggest. And this is not just for women. It's not just for children, women, men, children, boys and girls, both. But they will appear very scripted in what they say. The person will have very few personal possessions. They don't have anything. What they have is usually the clothes on their back and whatever else their, and I'm using air quotes here, master will allow them to have. Probably there's two big signs. These are probably the top three that probably should throw up red flags. The rest are all general abuse type scenarios. The next three, I think, really should throw up red flags. The abused person is always accompanied by someone, always. And not only are they accompanied by that person, but they will always look to them before speaking to you, even if you approach them directly. Hey, how are you today? They will always look at the person accompanying them before they speak, before they answer. For permission, for guidance, for, hey, you got to remember a lot of these people, once they've been in that cycle for a long time, they start to suffer Stockholm syndrome, and they start to feel like this is normal. And we all know on the outside looking in that it's not normal, but that's how their mentality is. If you come across a child who's using very adult language, and by that I don't mean necessarily that they have a good vocabulary, but they speak in a very adult way. Most kids aren't programmed to do that. And most people that have been around kids at any length will have that knowledge that this person isn't speaking the way they should at their particular age, whatever age group that is. And this one mainly applies to the work part of it, for labor, forced labor. The person is dropped off and collected for work at unusual times, meaning they're an hour early. They're picked up 30 minutes early. They're dropped off an hour late. It's always very specific. And in certain cases, they do that because they don't want that particular person to be in a particular job for very long, because they could get comfortable enough to start to speak and talk about what their life is at home. A lot of times, if they're in a forced labor situation, the owner will know this, but maybe the other employees will not. So it's very coerced. The owner is going to be able to know that, but the workers are also not going to be there very long. They don't want them to build or foster any relationships with any of the other workers. It's very isolated. And that's one of the things that made me so angry about this. As a people person who can take a 24-hour day and take 12 of those hours and devote them to people, the thought of being completely isolated for that time is enough to drive me crazy. And I'm not saying everybody's like me, because they're not. But even on the most hard of hard people, if that's your life every day, it's maddening. This is kind of an obvious one. A child checking into a hotel with an older adult male. And it's unfortunate that we're at that position now. If you and your boys have went to a ball game in Cincinnati and you had a beer too much and you don't want to drive home from here, it's not unusual to go to a hotel and spend the night. But now that could be questioned. Is this your son? Yeah. Is that your dad? Yeah.
And since you bring that up,
You've had similar experiences with your daughter.
I was a single dad. I raised my daughter from the time that she was 4 years old. And there was many, many times when I knew that I was being asked questions because I was a male. If I had been a woman in the same situation, I would not. I remember one time that I got pulled over in Johnson City, Tennessee, by a state trooper. I was speeding. I was guilty as crap. I'm always guilty when I get pulled over for speeding. But in this particular case, they began to ask several questions about my daughter. And I could tell where it appeared it was, is this your child or have you stolen her? But what you just mentioned would not happen if a young woman was in a motel with sons or daughters. The questions wouldn't be there. Now, do I think that those questions need to be asked when it's a male more than a woman? Yes, because unfortunately, sadly, that's the people. It's the males that are doing the human trafficking. It's usually not women. As a single father, it still sucks time after time when you're questioned about this person you have. Yeah, it sucks, but I understand the need for it. I get it.
Yeah, and that's just part of the world we live in now, unfortunately. It really is. So I downloaded a whole report from the NWO, and I have scoured. No, I'm sorry. United Nations.
Okay.
Same thing, in my opinion. Same thing. New World Order, United Nations. They're going to the same goal. Tax the Americans, let them pay for the new world.
Day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't even know that. You really dislike the United Nations?
I can't stand them. Not only, in fact, I'll go as far to say is the United Nations building in New York would make a great place for a retirement facility.
Do you think the world would be better off if we just did away?
I don't know that it would be better off,
but how can you dislike them that much if you, on the other hand, think they're doing good in the world?
I could go a whole story about how I feel about the United Nations. Maybe we should do that.
Conspiracy.
Listen, we got Clay Davis going to hopefully come up and join us soon. We'll bring that up when Clay's here. Anywho, hey there, KSJXV Max. What a name. Well, we're glad you're here, regardless of your name, man or lady. We appreciate you being here. So, anyway, back to the human trafficking. So, I went to several websites doing research on this particular topic, and the numbers are kind of all over the place, from estimates and estimated people of who are involved in human trafficking to reported cases. There's a huge gap there. So it really depends on where you're at. Oh, you're good. And so I just want to bring out some disheartening facts. And now this is from eTactics. Elia Metzler made this report, and I'm just going to quote some of her stuff. So how do people become trafficked? It's not just slavery. It's not just someone in a white van driving by with free candy written on the side and they take somebody. That's a big component of it, especially when it's children. But who else? How else does that happen? For adults, it's usually the lure of false promises of economic opportunity. Hey, we got a great job. We think you'd be great for it. Come with us. We're going to put you in this position, especially when it involves people on the streets. In Mexico, when yep.
Which could only be spent at the company store. So
Yep.
you weren't even given money that could be spent where you want it.
No,
You
you're
pay the
right.
companies for it.
The more obvious reasons and ways that this is happening is violence, threatening to use violence. You're going to work for us, we're going to kill your family, that kind of stuff. Uh, some of the higher surveil the targets that they want for a specific. And here's how this works. If you have, say, a rich businessman that is in the market for a very specific person, they will go out and find said person. They will surveil you. They will take video of you. They will record your voice.
It's like Liam Neeson and Taken. Right?
Yeah, and they will send all that information back to the buyer. The buyer will say, "Yep, that's who I want," and then you're gone. You wake up in the back of somebody's trunk one day. um, and these next two are really what I think our government, especially here in Kentucky, has went a long way of doing to fixing when it comes to illegal or people that come from the southern border to work here on a work visa. When that first started, there was a lot of times that, I was very young back then, but I worked on tobacco farms from the time I could hold a gardening hoe. And there was a very that they had several Mexicans that were working with us, um, that were all grouped together in a small apartment, and they didn't make much money, not much more than I did, and I was a punk kid. Um, by the time I left that and got a quote, and I'm using air quotes, a real job, their situation had vastly improved because of A, I worked for a very good employer who wanted to do right by his people, and B, the state laws had changed to make it very, very advantageous for the workers. They got a fair wage. Uh, they had the opportunity to live on the farm. They brought in mobile homes for them with a 2-bedroom mobile home would have 2 dudes in it, or if he brought his family, one family in that. Um, and they got paid a fair wage.
One of the things, by the way, to interrupt,
Oh, no, you're good.
reading about on that exact same subject before Kentucky began passing legislation to do what you just said to ensure that those people had a decent standard of living. One thing that some of the farmers would do would be to collect the passports the first day they were there and to keep the passports away from the people, meaning they couldn't go anywhere. They didn't even have the ability to prove that they were here legally
Right.
without the passport.
Yeah, and that's not fair to them.
Many of those laws that were passed was something as simple as requiring that you not take their passport, that their visa, that they be allowed to keep that, which means that they could go to town. That means they could go on another job interview.
Or they could go to a different job
Yes.
if you weren't treating them right. And
Absolutely.
that's where they break from what we're talking about today. Because they did have that freedom to be able to now, okay, this farm's not treating me well, or we're running out of work and I'm not getting very many hours, but I can go to this farm and make, because all of the people that I experienced while doing that were here for one thing. They wanted to make as much money in a season as they could so they could go home.
There's a catch-22 to that whole process, because I know many of the farmers would pay $1,000 to $1,500 per person to get them here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was a certain point where they needed to make sure that they were at least reimbursed for the money they spent to get the person here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fine line there, as it is with many things. We like to look at things in black and white.
Then it really isn't.
Like the gray areas, because that's hard to determine who's at fault. And in many cases, most cases probably, there's a little bit of truth in both sides. But in this one, when you look at forced servitude, people being forced to pay off a debt, in many cases like this one, there's a legitimate reason. My ex-father-in-law, he was a large tobacco farmer in Millersburg, Kentucky, and he would bring in 15 to 20 every year. And if I remember correctly, this was 25 years ago, he was paying, again, $1,200 to $1,500 per person
To
his
endorse their
company
video.
to bring them here,
Yeah.
to find them for the transportation to get them here. So, yeah, you can certainly understand how some of the people would attempt to keep them long enough to at least recoup their money. At the same point, there were some of these farmers that you're talking about was treating these people like animals.
Right. So let's get into some numbers. And I hope that these numbers aren't confusing enough so that they move you, so that you start paying attention in your neighborhood. Because these numbers in today's world, we're talking 2023, to have as many, and they call them, everything is so woke these days, and I hate it. But for most intents and purposes, they're slaves. They're either slaves economically or they're slaves physically, but they're slaves. Modern slavery. So from 2014 to 2022, the numbers of reported, and that's key, human trafficking is up 60% in the entire world. How many people are in the world? 70 billion? 7 billion? 8 billion.
We just passed 8 billion.
8 billion people. So that's huge. The law ends up prosecuting less than 5% of all known human trafficking cases. Even when they're caught red-handed, these cases are very hard to prove. Like, as an example, we often see here in the United States, we see the tractor trailer full of Hispanic folks from Central America and Mexico in the back of the truck. They get pulled over, the driver gets off. In so many cases, because they're focused strictly on trying to.
Wasn't it last summer when there was like
2 summers ago?
60 people that died.
Yeah, in the back of a truck.
Air conditioning went out. In the back of
Yep. Crazy. So in 2018, some of these numbers are a little dated because, like the census, they only happen every 10 years, whatever. Some of the countries with the largest numbers of modern slaves include India at 7.99 million people. These are estimates. China, 3.86 million, but you would have thought those numbers would have been reversed. But there's a catch to that. North Korea, 2.6 million, Pakistan, 3.2 million, Nigeria, 3.3 million. And if you base that on the number per 100 or per 1,000, North Korea is by far the biggest number. The numbers one.
Just that the numbers had gotten out. The country so close.
Yeah, and again, these are estimates, and they're basing that on the North Korean government, obviously. 104 per 1,000. A couple of countries I've never even heard of. Central African Republic is 22 per 1,000. Afghanistan is 22 per 1,000. And I'm going to just blow through these numbers because numbers are hard to understand on a podcast. I get that. And it really, really, really sucks. So of the victims, we'll just talk about these. So 65% of all human trafficking victims are female. 46 of those are adult women. 19% are adolescent or younger. 35% obviously are victims are male. 20% are adult men. 15% are adolescent or younger boys. 60% of detected labor victims are male. The majority of sex trafficking victims are almost 80%. Of that 80%, 20% are adolescents or younger. So in a world of, I just can't even wrap my head around the numbers and how that makes sense and how many young girls are being bought, sold, or traded into a sex trafficking situation in this world, and their whole lives are gone. Even if they're able and somebody is able to get them out of that business, they have lost so much of their life. By far, the numbers in those is Africa and South Asia are the two biggest child sex trafficking cases. 50% in the region involve adolescents, kids in Asia and Southern Asia and Africa. In some parts of Africa, children constitute nearly 100% of all human trafficking, which in Africa, now to put that into context, it's not all sex. A lot of times in Africa, families will give their children up to pay a debt or to buy a new part of their house or to buy a new ox to feed the rest of their family.
And that you and I mentioned earlier, that has been going on
since the beginning of time. It really has. Now, here's some things that you may not think of as human trafficking, but most of the first world countries in the world do believe that this is part of human trafficking. Forced military services, many countries in Africa. If you're old enough to hold a gun, you are conscripted into their particular local militia or their army.
Israel requires, I believe it's 2 years mandatory for every person turning the age of 18.
Yes. Well, that's, at 18, you're an adult, and I don't.
It's still forced military service.
It is.
Is there a difference in the age?
I think the difference is, Jerry, because they do both male and female. There's no exceptions to that. In Israel, when you turn 18, you do 2 years in the military. Period. No, I don't either. I don't either. And here's the one that's going to blow your mind. Another thing that human trafficking involves, and this is a huge market in first world countries, and it kind of blew me away, organ harvesting. They will literally swipe people off the street just to take as many organs from them as they can and dump them.
Not just in movies that happens.
That absolutely happens. It just means that whoever you are, whatever your age is, you need to be aware of your surroundings. That usually happens to younger people.
Very big.
You are an older dude, they're not going to take a bunch of your stuff. It's all worn out and old and busted. But for the young folks that listen to us, be aware of your surroundings, who you're drinking with, and who you're out partying with, because you don't want to wake up in that bathtub of ice water.
Whether it's this or someone slipping something into your drink, I can't even imagine what it's like to be a female and have to worry about going out drinking with another one or two of your girlfriends. Unless someone agrees to be the designated driver and to not drink the entire night.
To take care of all that situation. Right. So why do people try to traffic in other people? Money.
One and only reason.
It's estimated that one trafficked human, okay, and at this point it's a commodity, right? So every trafficked human generates up to $100,000 US for the trafficker.
I would think the sex trafficking probably.
Oh, absolutely.
Drives up that number.
79% of all human trafficked people are sex trafficked, and that goes against the whole children, male and female, adolescents, male and female, full of grown adults, male and female. Let's see. That's a whole lot of numbers. Let's get out of the numbers because I don't want to talk about numbers the whole time because they are utterly. Sure.
How many cases in America per year?
I was getting ready to get to that. Oh, there it is. Sorry, I had to pull up the right things. So while I'm pulling that up, I just want to talk about what the actual definition of human trafficking is. Human trafficking is the practice of exploiting adults and children for use as commodities. Let that settle for a second. Commodities. Or objects in condition of sexual and labor servitude. Modern slavery.
I'm pretty sure I've worked for a couple of companies that view their employees as commodities.
Most companies do these days, unfortunately, but not into the extreme that we're talking about, obviously. Jeffrey Epstein, that's a big name. The Canadian clothing designer, Peter Nagard. These are people that have been have been in trial or on their way to trial for these type of things that didn't quite make it. So the numbers in America, and I was actually going to pull that up specifically because,
Question.
sure, go ahead.
You mentioned Epstein, I've done zero research on this topic. I left it up to you. When you was talking about human trafficking, I Googled that earlier. Here's a definition that went along very close with what you said of human trafficking. The recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of people through force, fraud, or deception with the aim of benefiting monetarily. Now, through force, fraud, or deception, does that mean that someone who pays someone for sexual work, is that human trafficking?
The person paying for the sexual work? No.
Free or one?
The pimp is the one who's been doing the human trafficking in that
What
situation.
if they're free to leave at any time and they're only there because of what he's paying? If I'm not mistaken, I'm not trying to defend Jeffrey Epstein. He was a horrible human. He was a waste of oxygen. But it's my understanding that he wasn't using force to keep these people. It was simply money. He was monetizing. That was his incentive. Is that human trafficking? Is my question.
Yes. And it's human trafficking because those people who say that he was using money to keep them, they never saw the money.
Well, they did.
I didn't see any reports of that ever.
They were paid big money.
Was they paid money for their actions or paid money to keep
For
quiet?
the time. Supposedly, it all started with like innocent massages or whatever. So these girls were paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars to come to his mansion and give him a massage. So when you've got high school girls, yeah, you start offering them several $100s money when they would again recruit girls who had nothing basically. Virginia Guthrie, one of the biggest names in it. I remember reading that she said that they were paying her considerable amounts of money.
So after doing the research here, it's not showing me the actual number for America, but since we're one of the biggest first world countries and by far the richest, our numbers are way up there, probably higher than Egypt's or India's, honestly. And the scary thing is 46%. I think I gave you that number of charges involving any kind of sexual or human trafficking in America. Those charges are dropped. They're not even enforced.
Even after charges are originally brought?
Right.
Which I'm sure it's a very small percentage of the ones that do it are
Yep.
even charged to begin with.
Now, some good news. The good news is that every state in America, it is a felony. If you get caught and it's proven, you're going away for a long time. According to that stat, however, you're 50-50. If you get a good lawyer, you may not serve any time at all. And that's just horrendous to me. And I'm not going to cut this short because I don't want to take up the whole episode with it. But I am bringing it up just because I think, the whole premise of our show is to what needs more coverage. And I'm giving this two-way big thumbs up that we need to hear more about it. We need to do more personal research on it. And you need to be aware of people in your surroundings.
This is one thing that's a little hard to bring up because you bring it up and you begin to have some feminists say that's not where you should put the focus. You hear all the time people criticizing someone that, and it's usually, unfortunately, in reference to women, say they shouldn't have been in this period at that time of night. They shouldn't have been dressed as provocatively as they chose.
There's no excuse.
That should not be a factor. Unfortunately, in the sick, twisted world we live in, it is a factor. So you have to be aware. You have to be aware of where you're at. You have to be aware of what you're wearing. You have to be aware of the impression that you're giving to other people because it could make the difference in whether or not you're targeted. Yeah. You have to be aware of if you're going out for drinking with a couple of your buddies. Is there someone that's sober? Is there someone to look around and say, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to be aware.
Well, I am done with that. I want to get back into it. That's probably we'll label that part 1 because I think that we need to come back and revisit that part 2 at a different time.
And, going along with our premise, does it deserve more or less airtime? Combine that with the fact of our tagline that we never show. You can't see the light, be the light.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if nothing else, we need to give it some more coverage. So
Yeah.
we promise we'll come back and give this.
Yeah,
some more
absolutely. Absolutely.
So the mortgage market changes on. So it's important to have your mortgage professionally managed.
It is. And Ed Locke with USA Mortgage offers great personalized customer service with more customized options tailored to your financial goals and needs.
So if you're looking to cruise into a new home, he can be the driver and get you there.
Call or text Ed at 502-680-0983 and find out how to get approved. NMLS ID 448908 Acquisition Company LLC, doing business with USA Mortgage. NMLS ID 227262. This is not a commitment to lend. Additional terms and conditions apply. USA Mortgage
Is an equal housing lender.
Yes.
I'm so glad you take the legal terms. That would be tough for me to do all those numbers.
Hey, I'm just glad that USA Mortgage has
Yes,
enough
you are.
faith in our podcast to help us, and we get to help them. So I'm stoked by that.
And I will say this, and I know that you have known Ed longer than I have. You know him far better than I do. We were certainly glad to become professionals, to be paid for this. We believe in Ed. We think he's an absolute fantastic guy that offers a great service, that he's a very reputable, trustworthy guy.
I utilize.
We would not have taken any money from him.
Yeah, I absolutely utilize them every chance I get with my real estate business in real life. So, I've talked a whole lot. Won't you start us off with your first headline? I've got some headlines I want to get into because they fired me up today about that, and I'm ready to get off on some stuff.
Well, since you're fired up, I'll start with an easy one that hopefully will calm you down, lower the blood pressure.
Okay, yeah, okay. What you got?
I was just reading a couple hours ago about how the United States is gearing up to announce a major new weapons package for Ukraine this Friday.
What? Are you absolute? Please tell me you're joking.
I can't say that I'm joking. I will say that was verbatim the headline that I clicked on. I do believe it was clickbait, as you put it in the past.
Oh.
It really isn't, from what I heard, they think, because, again, it's not been announced. It won't be until Friday. But the headline was a major new weapon package. Once I got to reading it, it's not really that big. It's much smaller than the others, so it's not a major new package. But apparently there is going to be an announcement this Friday of a new weapons package. It's going to be sent to
more of the same,
Germany.
or are we sending more and getting more involved in this war?
The next one is going to include additional military ammunition and armor, likely Stryker armored combat vehicles. This is the only new thing that I read. We have said for sure that M1 Abrams tanks are not going to be included. Tanks have been mentioned with several countries around the world. Germany and Poland, I believe, have agreed to send tanks. Excuse me.
Hey, Fuzzy, glad you're here.
Does. So, yeah, just wanted to throw that out to calm you down.
Yeah, that's going to calm me down. We're sending strikers. Are we at least going to take our freaking logo off of them as they roll into Ukraine?
Well, no, but we are going to, I'm sure, once again, bring some of their guys over here to the United States to train them before we just say, hey, here.
Ammunition and now,
additional artillery ammunition.
The report is, and the NATO report is that I read today, that Germany would be happy to send them some of their wonderful tanks if we would also commit tanks. Poland has said the same. And it's just a matter of time. Why? Jerry, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I forgot the part.
My head.
Let me finish. I forgot the part that actually will calm you down a little bit. This package will not include the long-range Army tactical missile system that can reach deep behind Russian lines in Crimea or the Donbas region, according to two of the unidentified sources. The Biden administration has balked at sending long-range munitions despite Kiev's pleas for fear of provoking Russian President Vladimir Putin.
What do you think he's... Okay, so follow me here for just a second. I'm the president of the United States, and I don't want to provoke by what you just read. I don't want to provoke Vladimir Putin. We are the only country in the world that has the Stryker armored class vehicle right now. That's not going to provoke him. The fact that I'm pretty sure we developed it. Have we sold it to them?
I think I'm not positive.
Anywho, the bullets that are shooting Russian troops out of Ukrainian weapons that we provided aren't provoking him.
Here's how I would answer that. There's a pretty well-known, pretty popular politician from several years ago that has a video out that I watched just the other day that talked about this very subject. He talked about that there was an argument going on at the time. This is in the 80s, with people debating about war and peace. And obviously, peace is what everyone wants. No one wants war. And his comment was this: there's only one way to get peace, and that's surrender. There's only one way to get peace immediately, and that's on your knees. And if by the way, the guy that gave that speech was Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
So his point was, for those that are preaching appeasement, it will come to the point when you have a choice and you continue to appease. His point was what?
Peace through strength.
Peace through strength.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair. Good deal. 100% with you, Jerry. Here's what you got to do.
Keep appeasing people who were.
I'm not saying appease them. I'm not saying appease them. We're going to send her war. No, I do not want to appease them. I do not.
We do something that
listen.
Appease them, you
here's how you fix that, and I'm in. President Biden goes to the floor of Congress and asks for a formal declaration of war.
That's what you want.
If we're going to send our troops, our money, and our stuff to Ukraine. Yeah, we are. We've sent almost $100 billion
on the ground in Ukraine.
No, we got them all around Ukraine.
Okay, but we do not have troops on the ground in Ukraine. And you're saying you want to do
no,
that?
Listen. Last
week you wanted not one American.
I don't.
Now you're saying you want to send our troops.
I'm just saying I'm tired of these presidents just sending and giving away all of our stuff without the people who actually vote and should be voting to do that. Secondly,
without the people, what?
Congress controls the purse. If we're going to send $100 billion to a country, I don't care what country it is, for whatever reason.
Multiple times on this.
Yeah, well, they need to be fired.
Well, a minute ago you said that Biden is doing it all. The Congress has passed 2 or 3 different bills.
Senate has.
Send this.
Well, I know. And what I'm getting at is that why do we keep antagonizing this country that we're either I'm befuddled.
Because we're not willing to have peace by going to our knees?
But it has nothing to do with us.
Sure it does. Allowing Russia to become the power that the USSR once was has nothing to do with America?
Sure it does.
Are you kidding me?
So if it's that big of a deal, declare war and go to war.
Why do we have to? How do you go from last week not wanting to lose one? Not one.
I don't. I still don't.
Troops. Now you're all into let's declare war.
I'm just saying, Jerry, I am sick to death with people, be it Washington, the president, whoever. We don't have any money, zero money in Washington, none, not one penny. We're $30 trillion in debt to China and to every other country out there that deems our bonds, which at some point they're going to say your bonds aren't worth squat. $30 trillion in debt. And we're sending $100 billion over there.
I believe it was last week when you mentioned that in retail, that one of the things that you told your assistants.
Yeah, bring a solution.
You did not want for them to bring you a problem unless they would also bring a solution. Here's my question to you: what do you propose as a good alternative?
As a good alternative to what?
What we're doing now.
Okay. What we're doing now, the good alternative would have not been having our dumbass Secretary of States trying to get Ukraine into NATO 5 years ago. That would have been the problem.
Donald Trump, Secretary of State, tried to get
Ukraine has been on a proxy. We've been in this situation with Ukraine since the last leader of Ukraine.
I could very well be mistaken. Ukraine has wanted to join the United Nations for a long time. You just said that 5 years ago,
And the date may have been wrong.
I'm not aware of any Republican or Democrat that has encouraged Ukraine to join the United Nations. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that's happened.
I'm just saying that that is the entire reason, according to Russia, if you're following Russia at their word, that they invaded Ukraine.
No. That our Secretary of State tried to get them to
no,
join the United
that
Nations?
NATO has been courting Ukraine for join.
That Ukraine has been, once again, that's not a possible solution. Instead of sending this money, instead of sending the ammunition, what do you think we should have done? If we stop today, what should we do instead of sending them money, ammunition, anything else? What is it you think we should do?
I would like to see the countries that are more directly in line do more.
Who's directly in line with what?
Yeah.
Being affected?
Yeah.
America's not at the top of that list, and please tell me who is. If the rebuilding of Russia to the former power, world power that it once was, doesn't affect the United States, please tell me who it affects more.
I think it affects us some. I'm not denying that.
But
one country isn't the former USSR. Now, obviously, they still have Belarus. They still have some of the other small fringe countries that they've installed.
Who else do they really want? What other economic power is out there?
That's true. I'll give you that.
It's Ukraine. So this would have, once again, what is it we should be doing? Give me a possible solution.
I'm just saying, if you're going to devote all this stuff, Jerry, there are protocols in place. First of all, how in the hell are we giving away money we don't have? Here's the scenario. We are borrowing money from China, also an enemy.
From
everyone. Primarily China. We are giving that money to Ukraine, and we are writing the check for the interest. Not we as a country, we as taxpayers. I think I have a right as a taxpayer, and every person in America has a right to be a little upset that we keep giving away money we don't have.
100% agree. Here's what I will say. As the manager who's talking to an assistant that has just brought me the problem and keeps telling me how big the problem is, I still have yet to hear a solution.
Well, the solution is we got to find a solution.
Okay, I agree.
But getting us either dragging us and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be, but we are tiptoeing our way toward that war anyway.
Possibly. And
how could we not be?
I'm not going to sit here and tell you I know what the right solution is. And
we've said this 100 times.
This much money, this much armor. I am saying that I believe that we need to do.
And I don't trust Zelensky. If we were talking about Britain, or we were talking about
what reason do you not trust?
All kinds.
The fact that he didn't wear a suit to Congress.
The fact that the Ukrainian flag flew at our Congress kind of bothers me a little bit too.
I'm sorry. You're right. He insisted. He brought some soldiers that forced that to happen, right?
No, we're not.
Whoa.
Nancy Pelosi let that happen.
So that's a problem with Nancy Pelosi, not Zelensky.
I'm just saying, I'm a good judge of character. And when I look at Vladimir Zelensky, I don't see good people. I think in 20 years, or whatever his name is, Zelensky, when I look at him and I look back in 20 years, I feel like I'm going to be right about this. I don't know that I'm right about this.
About Vladimir Putin?
I don't like him either.
But at least you're standing up for him.
I'm not standing up for him.
Everything that he's wanting, you're insisting that our government do.
No.
Stop supporting Ukraine in all methods.
I'm just saying.
That's what scares me. It's not that I'm.
Putin has asked for peace like 4 times in the last month.
No, he hasn't. Be honest, Steve. He has not asked. There was one time he asked for a 24-hour peace treaty, and by the way, he's done that at least once before, and then they followed through by doing what? Overnight, they sent a barrage of bombs, a barrage of missiles.
I'm pretty sure that was after Zelensky bombed an airfield. After that. Not Zelensky himself, but Ukraine. I'm not a Russian super. I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, Russia's the greatest." I'm not.
Are you really seriously criticizing Zelensky for bombing an airfield from which was coming planes that was bombing hospitals and schools in Ukraine?
No,
They don't
I'm
have a right
saying
to defend their own country.
I'm saying they didn't even. Is that their response to peace? Because that was immediately
No,
after
that was
Russia had
not.
asked for peace.
No, it was not. Not even close.
Okay, well, we just
It
have
was
to agree
not.
to disagree because I think that it was.
We can agree on one thing.
What's that?
Neither of us have a solution at this point.
Really don't.
And that's the point. This is a complicated issue. It's got a lot of possible repercussions on either side.
And
Is dragging us into a war or rebuilding Russia to the powerhouse it once was.
I don't know what the solution
I don't
is to
either.
that, but I do know that if we're going to tiptoe to it, the last thing that I want is for us to go into another conflict without a formal declaration of war.
More so than that, what I don't want is for us to go into a conflict with no stated objectives.
No plan.
No plan.
Yeah.
No.
That comes.
At least say, if this happens, we're out.
Yeah.
When we can achieve this, we're done.
Yeah.
Don't go into another Korean Vietnam that's just on and on.
Or Afghanistan.
Or Afghanistan. Sure.
I mean, that's the thing. And maybe it is best that we're letting Ukraine fight the war because we haven't been able to finish anything in 40 years. And that's not a knock on our servicemen.
Oh, correct. We was able to kick their ass in the Falkland Islands.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, my bad.
Huge conflict.
That's not a negative to our military, and it's not a slight toward them. I love our military.
The inability or the unwillingness of our government
to let them fight their fort,
to actively commit to a cause,
or just to let the generals and the admirals and the people who know how to wage war wage the damn war. That's the problem.
Yep.
That's what scares me about this whole thing.
Sorry, I thought that was really going to be a short one brought up.
That's all right.
Your turn.
Now
that we've calmed you down.
Yeah, I'm very calm. You know what else I hate?
What's that?
I freaking hate clickbait. It makes our job as podcasters stupid hard.
You know what, Steve? It makes the job of every American trying to figure out what's going on in the world.
Oh my gosh. When I was trying, as an example, when I was doing research for human trafficking, I had to scour like 15 articles to find 3 articles that actually covered, without speculation, the ball numbers of human trafficking. I can't tell you how many articles that I clicked on was, well, if human trafficking goes away, life will be roses and sunshine. So says somebody I've never heard of in some city I've never heard of who's a master at origami. Who the hell cares? Give me the numbers. Give me the stats. Give me what's going on in the world. How am I supposed to learn and then help others learn if I can't find the info? Ridiculous. I hate clickbait. If you are a clickbaiter, I don't like you. You are not my people.
I don't think you would find anyone in America that would disagree with you other than.
And I know they do that. You know, they get more clicks, they get paid. I get that. But my goodness, be honest with your stories.
I finally clicked on it. Were you done?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I just blah.
Speaking of clickbait,
everything on my list today fires me up. So go right ahead.
I had one that did the opposite. It kind of renewed my hope. I clicked on an article. It was exactly what the topic said.
Oh.
And the topic was increasing fine for left lane slowpokes gets quick traction.
Yeah. Amen.
A bill allowing police to charge a bigger fine for people driving slow in the left lane of interstates and other multi-lane highways is one of the first to be taken up at the South Carolina State House in 2023. The law requires drivers in the left lane to move over if a car comes up behind them and the right lane is clear. It doesn't say if you're going the speed limit. It doesn't say if you're going 5 miles. It says if you are in the left lane and a car comes up behind you and it is clear for you to pull over, it is your requirement to do so.
They've
already
men.
made this the law. I think it was
What
back
state?
in 2021, South Carolina.
I love South Carolina.
No.
We have a good amount of listeners in South Carolina.
Kudos to
I love you.
not only for the fact that in 2021, I believe they made it law, they revisited it and said, you know what? $25 isn't enough. We're going to increase it to $100. And if that doesn't work, we're going to $500. We're going to
Good.
make those people friggin' pull over. was getting
tell
myself,
you how many times I get behind somebody in the left lane. It is not your job. If you are not an officer of the law of some sort of traffic group, it is not your job to regulate speed. Get your ass out the way. Or as my good friend, who I'd like to be my good friend, Ludacris once said, move, get out the way. Anywho,
I'm sorry, that was the one I meant to bring up when I said I was trying to calm you down.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate South Carolina. I love South Carolina. Let's move to South Carolina just so we can drive in the left lane. That makes me happy. So I have a bone to pick. I have a real, and this is just a personal issue for me, okay? We talked the other day that even if Joe Biden or Barack, we don't necessarily agree with these folks, but if they invited us to the White House, we would go, we'd wear a suit, we'd be respectful of the office. Right. Last two championships that the Golden State Warriors won were during Donald Trump's presidency. They refused to go. Now they were just seen at the Biden White House because Biden is such a fine, outstanding young man. And they decided to go. Listen,
it's a shame.
It's really stupid.
It is. But the bigger picture is it seems to be okay in this country to be leftist, to be liberal, to be overly critical of anything conservative.
Oh, we can go for days.
I'm the first one to say that Donald Trump was a crazy guy, in my opinion. That's not indicative.
That's on the nice side, douchebag on the far side, and you wouldn't be wrong on either one.
You can't have double standards. If it's okay to criticize, one side, then it's got to be okay to criticize the other.
I'm glad you bring up the double standard thing because not only does this apply to the Warriors, whom I've never been a fan of. I have a lot of props for Stephen Curry. Great, probably the best shooter in the NBA's history ever. But I have a real problem with the NBA allowing them, either you're going to go to the White House when you win a championship or you're not. Why alienate 50% of your fan base?
Well,
I don't get it.
Do you think the NBA should have the ability to force them to go?
No, I don't think so.
So
just don't go. Ever.
I agree.
Problem solved. Because I'm wearing an Indiana Pacers jersey right now. Not jersey, like a overshirt, whatever. Indiana Pacers are my team. I never have to worry about this because they're never winning a national championship. But I can guarantee you, if I see the Golden State Warriors on the TV, I'm turning the channel. I'm not giving them one more minute of my time. Just because if you're going to be that divisive and you don't care, you only think that your side's right, whatever. Steve Kerr is a huge liberal, especially when it comes to gun control.
Real quickly,
it's
not just them.
Oh, I know. It's
LeBron James, if I'm not
mistaken. I couldn't, I wouldn't.
Not, as long as Trump was in office, said he would not go
Good.
95%.
I couldn't care. I care more about that glass of wine than I ever cared about LeBron James or his opinion.
These are the big guys. We hear what LeBron James said. We hear what Steph Curry said. I'm sure if we looked into it, there's a whole crap load of them.
Yep, and I don't care about any of them.
I agree.
I'm not in. Now listen. Let me clarify. There's a certain group of people out there that will say, "I don't care about your personal opinions. Just play basketball. That's what you're paid for." Look, they have a platform. Use it. Just doesn't mean I have to agree with it and support you in it. That's all.
One thing that I would disagree with you with when you said if you see the Golden State come on, as long as the current people you have a problem with are there, fine. Don't punish the organization.
It's the coach.
As long as the coach is there.
As long as Steve Kerr's there, I'm out.
My point is punish the people, don't punish the organization. Because there's probably some members of every sports team. I'm not going to give up NBA, NFL, Major League. I'm not going to give up all sports because they happen to have a couple of assholes on every team.
Right. Well, see, the next three topics I have all run together. How about that?
3 for 1.
3 for 1.
Before that,
sure.
You ready?
I'm ready. We got some emu news. Emu news.
Kalamazoo County, Michigan. 6 emus on the loose. I don't know what it is about emus. Apparently, they pretty commonly wake up and choose violence.
They're kind of like you.
I guess. 6 emus on the loose in Kalamazoo County, Michigan. They escaped from a farm near Stadium Drive and 6th Street. It took several family members with feed and several sheriff's deputies with walking sticks to recapture the emus. Good news, they were all captured within a few hours. So, yeah, none died. Emu news updated.
Terry, I absolutely love emu news. But what happens when you run out of emu news? There can't. I mean, we don't live wherever emus are from, so at some point we're going to run out of emu news. Wonderful. It, right? Yeah, that's what they say. That's what they say.
What she said.
That's why you're divorced. Anywho, I'm sorry. That's what they say.
Oh, not just her. That's what they say.
Okay, so back to the Golden State Warriors. Steve Kerr came out after the last, and this is sad. Okay, after the last school shooting or mass shooting we had in the country, and said, "Hey, we got to do something," right? And he's entitled to his opinion. I appreciate his opinion for what it is. His opinion. It's not law. But like we just had a conversation of, he didn't have any solutions. He was just out there.
He did. There's one thing in particular that I remember. If you watched the same press conference that I watched, there was one thing he was asking for. There was one solution he had. He even had statistics on the fact that the majority of Americans back it up, and that is greater background check.
Oh yeah, that's right.
About that. That was what he was asking.
And
for.
That's something. That's something that even we agree with.
Yes,
so
I was kind of wondering what problem you had with it.
Well, today or yesterday, over the last week, President Biden was in the news again for having a press conference talking about the Second Amendment. I have a couple issues here. This is kind of layered, so follow. President Biden reminded Americans again why the Dems believe the Second Amendment is useless. He said, and I quote, "If you want to take on the government, you need F-15s, not AR-15s." So my first part of this from Joe Biden is, so you finally understand what the Second Amendment was all about to begin with. That we have a right to keep and bear arms to protect ourselves from a tyrannical or government. Because there for a long time, the Democrats and the liberals said that the Second Amendment was all about hunting rifles and the ability to hunt. And no.
The majority of Democrats did not.
Okay, so you're a really crazy leftist then.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. Those are the ones that get the headlines.
Crazy far left or right. Say crazy.
What?
The really crazy far left or right. Say crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. I agree with that. So that being said, now that he's finally admitted, now Joe Biden has been the world's worst at firearms advice. This is the same president who claimed that a double barrel shotgun, you could go out on the back porch and fire off both shots and that'd scare away anybody. It's also illegal to fire a firearm in most cities. And you would empty your chambers and have no actual ammunition to protect yourself. So not that Joe Biden is the person I'm listening for gun control and gun handling advice about. But I did appreciate the fact he actually acknowledged what the Second Amendment was created for, to protect the First Amendment, basically.
Do you agree with this argument, by the way?
What?
That in today's world, an AR-15 would not suffice.
I disagree 100%. Here's why I disagree 100%. The AUT-8 or the AUT-6, which was basically an AUT-6, which is basically a 30-06 bolt action rifle, won 2 world wars. World War One, World War Two. It's a 30-06 caliber bullet, and that's what most of our troops had going into World War One and World War Two. Seemed to do okay then. And I do understand your argument and Joe Biden's argument that in today's world, that they have M1 Abrams and we've got AR-15s. That's not much of a fair
Not
fight.
even the Abrams. I mean, they swooped in with some Apache helicopters. Or the F. They just bomb you with F-15.
Yeah.
You can fire all the
If
AR-15s you want at the F-15 flying over.
here's where I have a problem with that, and here's where I think that the solution would be for that whole scenario you just said. I don't think that there's an American troop anywhere in our military service that would use a weapon on an American citizen.
Well, all you need to do is go back to the Rodney King riots in L.A. and see that that's not correct.
I don't think that you can't hold the entire military accountable to what a few bad cops would do.
I'm not talking about the cops. I'm talking about when the military was called in and used violence to suppress the riots in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I don't think that was right.
But
I was actually very young when that happened, so I don't remember.
My point is, the United States military did what was necessary against American citizens
with live ammo.
I'm not aware that they killed anyone.
I think it was all rubber ammo.
I don't even know if they fired bullets, probably. But my point is, American military was brought in and stopped the riots.
There's a difference between stopping a riot, though, and murdering American citizens who are objecting to something.
I will say this, from what I have heard, and I think it's rightfully so, that if anything similar to the January 6th ever happens again at Washington, D.C., and either side attempts to overrun Congress, that live ammo would be used. And I think it should be. You can't allow that to happen. Not when the vice president, not when senators and representatives lives are. You can't allow a building to be overrun. You disagree?
I think there's less fatal ways of handling that.
Like what? Like what we did? We didn't. We walked back and through. We did what Ronald Reagan said we couldn't. We went to our knees.
Oh, well.
I'm
not saying that it did. I'm just saying that I think there's other ways we can secure the building better.
Once again, I'm a manager. You're going to give me the problem. Give me a solution. Tell me.
How about we invest in automatic doors for one?
Automatic doors?
Yeah, absolutely. You press a button, there's an issue, the door shuts, boom, done. People that are trapped in.
The doors are not. First of all, it's a huge liability. You would not be allowed to have doors that would crush people. Meaning, if you got 3 or 4 big guys pushing, the door wouldn't shut.
Mm.
So those doors don't work against a mob that's trying to take over a building, which is what they did.
So that was my topic. I was just really happy to hear that Joe Biden finally realized and understood, and probably by accident said what the Second Amendment was actually for.
I don't know where you've been. I've heard for many years that exact argument. You and I have had the same discussion. We can get into it about. My question to you is that rifles and shotguns are no longer capable of stopping the government.
Which is why if you pass a background check and you can afford it, there's no reason you can't have a tank sitting in your driveway.
Exactly. My question to Steve has always been, okay, Steve, if we both agreed that pistols, rifles, and shotguns wouldn't be sufficient to stop the government. My question is, and you have all also said that it's not just rifles, pistols, and shotguns, it's weapons. So my question was always, is it okay for them to have machine guns, flamethrowers, Apache helicopters, tanks, nuclear submarines? And your answer is?
If you pass a background check and can afford it, I don't see why you shouldn't be allowed to have it.
For those of you that missed that, Steve just said that all the El Chapos of the world, before they're caught, and can pass a background check. And by the way, those are the only ones in the world that can afford the nuclear submarine.
Those guys have it
Apache
anyway.
Helicopters, they are welcome to have their nuclear submarines, their Apache helicopters. That's not scary at all.
I'm just saying. Here's the thing. Well, I forgot what my thing was. I totally went blank there for a second.
Oh, man. Here's a good one. This is one I really should have went to earlier to calm you down. The Swedish government has decided they need to get rid of the requirements for permits for people to dance, meaning that any establishment was required to have a permit specifically allowing people to dance or it was illegal. Swedish government wants to cut the red tape when it comes to dancing by abolishing a decade-old requirement for restaurants, nightclubs, and other venues that required them to obtain permits before allowing customers to dance. As it currently stands, owners could lose their liquor and business license if police officers came in and found patrons dancing and the owners did not have their required permit. Does that not open up such a huge way for you to get rid of all your competitors if they don't yet have their dancing license? Just, hire 10 people, pay them to go over and start dancing, call the police. They lose their liquor license. Can you imagine?
I can't.
You talk about all the problems we have in America. At least we know that some of those Nordic countries are some of the most socialist in the world. But are you kidding me?
Listen, I just want Lexington to get rid of the law saying I can't keep an ice cream cone in my pocket. They do that, I'm happy. I'm dancing without a permit. Well, we are like way over time.
When are we not?
When are we not? Guys want to preach. I want to preach. No, that's not true.
Brother.
I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you very much, every one of you. Also, we have a dedicated listener in Hong Kong now, and I really want that listener to send us an email. Let's reach out and talk to us.
The one in Slovakia, they didn't.
They haven't yet.
Maybe they will.
But maybe they will. But anyway, guys, we thank you. We appreciate you. We love your comments. Feel free to email us, text us, however you want to reach out. If you have ideas for shows, please reach out. We've got a couple brewing where we're going to have a couple of guests. I think we got like 3 or 4 guests lined up. So I'm pretty stoked with that. We're going to have, I don't know the dates yet. We're going to be getting with you guys on that. But thank you so very much for all your contributions and for making this worth doing. And as always, if you can't see the light,
be the light.